I almost deleted the reunion email while balancing my rent checkbook and grocery list, the way you swat a gnat near your coffee. 10 years of polite small talk didn't tempt me. One person did. Eli. My best friend, almost more, from a town I'd left and a self I'd outgrew. If I went, I risked reopening every almost. If I didn't, I might miss the one kiss that had waited. Patient as summer dusk behind the bleachers for me. If this story moves you, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts about courage, reunion dilemmas, and unexpected kisses below. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning while I was paying rent in my second-floor walk-up, the one with the chipped banister and the view of the bus stop. I balanced my coffee on an old magazine and clicked through the payment portal, the numbers neat as lined paper. When the confirmation dinged, another ding followed. Mapleton High Reunion Committee, subject line cheerful enough to belong on a banner. I almost clicked delete out of reflex. Rent had gone up again that month. Not a lot, but enough to make me double-check my grocery list and count the cans in my cupboard. There's a rhythm to living within your means. You make it a dance so it doesn't feel like a march. I stretched my back, heard my neighbor's radio through our shared wall, and thought about oatmeal versus eggs. Then I clicked the reunion email and saw Eli's name not at all, but everywhere. He wasn't mentioned, of course. It was a bland, pleasant invitation with a location, our high school gym, and a date plus ticket prices that made my eyebrows lift. There were bubbly exclamation points and a slideshow attachment of old yearbook photos. There was also a line that said, "Let us know if you need financial assistance." That made me pause. Someone on the committee knew about real life. I clicked the slideshow and watched static images flip by like someone flicking through memory with a fast thumb. There was my awkward haircut. There were our baseball games, faces blurred by time. There was the gym floor, glossy as ever. And then there was a shot of Eli and me in the stands sophomore year, the kind of picture you forget exists until it looks back at you. His laugh was frozen mid-sunbeam. My shoulder leaned toward him like it had ideas. I lived in Cleveland now, on a quiet street where maple leaves skittered in circles across the sidewalk, and the corner deli kept a jar of peppermints for customers. My place was small but honest. A couch that had moved with me twice, a kitchen that smelled like brewed coffee in the mornings, and a bookshelf that bowed slightly under the weight of too many paperbacks. My lease was month to month, which meant freedom and anxiety in equal measure. It was an ordinary morning, and yet the idea of Mapleton felt like a door I couldn't decide whether to knock on. It wasn't the town itself. I could handle the new paint on old storefronts, the small talk at the diner, the weathered smiles of teachers who remembered me. It was Eli. He was the reason my thumb hovered over RSVP, and then floated toward maybe later, then circled back like it was tracing the outline of a life I didn't quite live. We had been best friends, the kind you find early and, for a while, assume you'll keep forever without effort. He had a way of waiting for the punchline like it was a small gift he expected would arrive. We studied together, ran laps together, and shared French fries at the bowling alley on slow Friday nights. He cooperated in mischief better than anyone I've ever met. The summer after graduation, we almost kissed behind the bleachers at the fairgrounds, the tinny music of the carousel wrapping around us like the simplest story. We didn't kiss, though. Someone called his name, and we broke apart like we hadn't been leaning in at all. Then life happened in the way it does when you stop being 17 and start being everything that comes after. I moved 2 states away for college, hungry to become a version of myself that wouldn't make apologies. He stayed in Indiana for a while, studied something practical, and sent me emails full of jokes and weather reports. We drifted, or I did. I still don't know. I scrolled the reunion email one more time and clicked my phone's screen off when a knock sounded on my door. It was Mr. Harris from down the hall carrying a paper bag of peaches from the farmer's market like he wanted an excuse to give the building something sweet. He was retired, gentle, with a careful way of walking that made his cane more of a metronome than a crutch. He set the bag on my counter and leaned his cane against the cabinet. "Morning, kiddo," he said, calling me a kid in a way that made me feel protected instead of small. "Saw the bus driver carry this bag up the steps. Thought I'd save him a trip." "You are a hero," I told him, and I meant it. "I owe you peach cobbler," he smiled. You owe me stories. How's life? I told him about the email without meaning to. The words just pulled themselves up and out. Reunion, old Jim, bleachers, Eli. Like they'd been waiting on the edge of the sink for a good rinse. He listened with the patient curiosity of someone who knew that time mattered, but that we had it right now. Do you know where he is? He asked, wiping a bit of imaginary dust off the counter with his hand. I don't, I admitted. We lost touch. I'm not sure if he'll be there. I'm not sure if I want him to be. Isn't that silly? It's not silly, he said, and he peered at me like he was reading a page just for the joy of understanding it. Some people are chapters. Some are footnotes. Some are only a comma. And you think they're brief until they change the whole sentence. I laughed, but it landed in my chest as quiet as church. You should be the one telling the stories on YouTube, I said. You'd have 1 million subscribers. He wagged his hand. I don't know what I'd do with subscribers, but I do know what to do with peaches. Let me know when that cobbler is ready. After he left, I put 2 peaches in a bowl by the window and stared at them longer than fruit has any right to be stared at. I grinned for hovering too long over symbols, then sat down with a pad of paper and a pen. When something feels too big to decide, I write a list. Pros and cons as old as pencil. With Mapleton, the list looked like this. Pro, closure. Con, opening something I'm not ready for. Pro, see old friends. Con, be seen in old ways. Pro, maybe see Eli. Con, maybe see Eli. I made coffee number 2 and opened my laptop to check train prices. Flying felt too fast, like cutting a corner on an old street where the turn was meant to be taken slow. Trains had a kind of mercy. They gave you time to watch distance become landscape rather than nothingness. The prices were reasonable if I stayed with my mom a night or 2. I texted her before I could begin to talk myself out of it. Hey, Ma, there's a reunion. Thinking of coming home for a weekend. Would you be around? Her reply arrived in a rush of bubbles. Always around for you. I'll make your favorite casserole. If you want the house quiet, I can visit Aunt Sylvia. Or I can fuss over you. Your call. I smiled at the choice offered. Consent comes in many forms, I thought, and having options is a kind of kindness. I told her I wanted her there, but that I might also need time to breathe. She responded with a heart and a casserole emoji I didn't know existed. My phone chimed again. It was Lena from the community center where I worked. She ran the knitting group and had a way of getting everyone talking as their hands made loops. I oversaw activities and schedules, kept the coffee strong, and filled in for domino games when someone needed a partner. It was work that felt like sunlight even in winter. She'd seen me staring at the email earlier. Decision made? She asked, half made, I wrote. That counts. She sent a thumbs up, then a link to a sale on shirts. Buy something you feel yourself in, she added. Don't dress for the past. I laughed and clicked. It helped to think of something tangible, a shirt that felt like an honest hello rather than a costume. I picked a soft green button-down with sleeves you could roll past your elbows and a dark blue tie I wasn't even sure I'd wear. The promise of possible felt like the first inhale after someone reminds you to breathe. When the day slid into evening, I took my recycling down the stairs, passing the wall where tenants had tacked up flyers for guitar lessons and babysitting. There was a new one for a houseplant swap, a cheerful drawing of a fern waving hello. The building's lobby smelled like a faint echo of old wood, and the lemon cleaner are super used on Saturdays. Across the street, the bus came and went with the punctuality of a friend who values your time. I heard the faint chime of the church clock down the block and thought about time in quarters. Quarters paid for laundry. Quarters on a wood table next to a stack of old magazines in the lobby. Quarters of an hour measured by bells. My life had become small and large at the same time. My days were full, meals delivered to homebound neighbors, games called out in a lively voice, a paper calendar with neat boxes colored in. And yet inside that fullness, there was a gap shaped like a conversation that had paused and never resumed. 2 nights later, with a ticket purchased and the RSVP yes button finally clicked, I found myself at the barber's, the one with the checkerboard floor and the mirror that made everyone look like they'd already made a good decision. Tiana held up a lock of my overgrown hair and studied me the way a gardener studies a branch before deciding where to trim. You look like a man going somewhere, she said. I'm going home, I told her. Kind of. Ah, she said, and the scissors began their soft hymn. You want to be the person you are when you get there, not the person you were. Think about that when you pick the part, I laughed. Is there a part for brave and slightly terrified? Always, she said, and she gave me a cut that felt like a yes to something. On the train, I took a window seat and let the landscape scroll past like a kindly slideshow. Grain elevators, a white farmhouse with a swing that still moved in the breeze even though no one was sitting on it. A field rolled flat as a page. Somewhere near Toledo, a child in the seat ahead of me pressed his face to the glass and counted cows. His father smiled and didn't correct him when he skipped numbers. I noticed the way the father's hand rested on the seat, a quiet anchor. I thought about anchors and about how I'd once believed I needed to cut every rope to become my own person. I had mistaken drifting for freedom. Growing older had taught me that it is possible to be anchored and free, to be moored to what matters and still sail. There are many kinds of courage. Sometimes it looks like leaving. Sometimes it looks like returning. Today it looked like a train moving toward a gym with a glossy floor. I arrived in Mapleton on a gray afternoon with a sky that promised rain and delivered only a breeze. My mother's hug at the station folded around me like a blanket you forgot you needed. She had new glasses, the same laugh, and a casserole she insisted on taking from the trunk herself. I need to feel useful, she said, and I let her. We drove past the high school, past the park where we used to run, and past the old corner store that had turned into a coffee shop. Some things looked smaller, which made me feel bigger, but not in a way that felt smug. Some things looked exactly the same, like the mural of the town founders that we used to joke about. They still looked extremely sure of themselves in dusty paint. I found myself saying hello to buildings in my head. At home, I set my bag in the guest room. My old room had become a library for my mother's cookbook collection, a cheerful ocean of binders and clippings. She had kept my old desk, though, and in the top drawer, tucked beneath a stack of faded postcards, I found a folded piece of paper that made me stop breathing for a second. I recognized the fold pattern before I recognized the handwriting. It was my old letter to Eli, the one I wrote that summer after graduation. I never sent it. I'd tucked it at the back of my desk, foolishly thinking that putting it out of sight would take it out of mind. The paper had yellowed at the edges, and the ink had bled just enough to make the words softer. I sat on the edge of the bed and unfolded it like it might crack. It wasn't long. I'd written about the fair, the smell of the caramel corn, the way the night stuck to our skin. I wrote, I almost told you something I've been telling myself for a long time. I wrote, I want to know how the world looks when you are standing next to me and we're both looking at the same thing. I wrote, I don't know how to be brave out loud yet. And then at the end, if I ever get to say this to you, I hope I say it well. My mother knocked on the door frame, then stopped when she saw my face. Oh, she said softly, is that your letter? You knew it was there? I asked. The question surprised out of me. She reached for it, then pulled her hand back as if she might break something. You left it, and then you ran off to orientation, and then life rushed in. I found it when I changed your sheets. I didn't read it. I put it back. I figured when you needed it, you'd find it. I might need it now, I said. Then I'm glad you found it, she said, and she kissed my forehead like I was both grown and small, which is to say, like I was loved. I slept that night with the letter under my pillow, which I realized in the morning made me sound like a child playing at magic. But maybe that's what we do when we need courage. We make talismans. We give weight to paper and hope to ink. The morning of the reunion, I woke early to the sound of the wind chime on the porch, singing an uncertain tune. I dressed slowly and rolled my sleeves and tied the dark blue tie just in case. My mom made pancakes and a pot of coffee so strong it could have lifted a car in a pinch. Text me if you need an extraction, she said, handing me a napkin with her number on it, like I hadn't had her number memorized for years. I slipped the napkin into my wallet anyway. The gym looked like every gym in America, which is to say, it looked like people had been gathering there to aim and leap and cheer for generations. The floor shone. The banners hung proud. The bleachers still creaked in that familiar way that made your joints ache with memory. Someone had set up a table by the door with name tags printed in neat block letters and little stickers you could attach that said, "Ask me about," and then a blank space. I wrote Cleveland and activities at the senior center, and after a pause, pancakes. A woman I recognized as Maya from art class hugged me too hard for any awkwardness to survive. "Look at you," she said, her eyes kind but curious. "Look at us. We made it. We had." Small talk came easier than I expected because there was a script and because time had done some of the sanding down that needed doing. People asked about Cleveland. I asked about kids and jobs and favorite soups. We made jokes about aging like we hadn't spent years being terrified of it. My shoulders loosened. Every few minutes, my eyes went to the door. I saw him before he saw me. He was talking with someone from the track team, hands moving as he explained something that made them laugh. His hair was shorter, a little salt at the edges, and he wore a navy blazer over a white shirt. No tie. He had a new weight to him, not in his body, but in his presence, like he had settled into the person he carried around. For a second, I just watched him and felt how time is a circular thing. My chest had the same thought it used to have when I would see him in the hallway by my locker. "There you are." The words arrived like a small prayer I had never learned to say right out loud. He turned then, like the room had shifted and he wanted to see why. His eyes landed on me the way a bird lands on a familiar branch, carefully, surely. His smile started slow, then spread. He excused himself and crossed the space between us the way you cross a room crowded with history. "Hey," he said, as if we had met for coffee yesterday and cleared our calendars for a second cup. "Hey," I said back, and immediately thought I should have come up with something more profound. It turned out, "hey" was enough. He hugged me, brief and present, and when he stepped back, he kept his hands on my elbows like he was making sure I was real. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. "I hoped." "I almost didn't," I admitted, then laughed because honesty sounded safe with him at once. "It's good to see you." "It's good to see you too," he said. "You look like you. Like the you I imagined you becoming. That's a weird thing to say." "I'm sorry." "It's not weird," I said. "It's nice." I swallowed and dared. "You look like you too." We found a corner of the gym where the music wasn't too loud and traded the easy updates. He was a physical therapist now, working at a hospital in Indianapolis, which made a tilted kind of sense. He'd always had a way of paying attention to how the body carries pain and finds ways around it. He worked with veterans, which made his eyes grow soft when he said it. He liked his apartment. He owned 2 plants and a couch he considered comfortable enough to be a friend. I told him about Cleveland, about the seniors who could beat me at dominoes with half an eye on the board and a story in the other. I told him about Mr. Harris and the peaches and the houseplant swap flyer. He laughed, and it made the part of my chest that had been holding its breath relax. We didn't rush to the past. The present needed tending. We sipped punch from small cups and pointed out faces across the room that lit up old rooms in our heads. Then someone called for a group photo. We crowded in, elbows touching elbows, and the camera flash made us all blink like we were being welcomed into a new moment. After the photo, he leaned in. "Would you like to get some air?" he asked, and he said it like an invitation to a porch, to a conversation, not an escape from something we couldn't handle. "Yes," I said, and a part of me sat up taller. Outside, the air had cooled, and the sky had turned that forgiving blue that happens after a long afternoon. The track wrapped around the field, a gray ribbon that had held so many wishes. We walked without stepping into old patterns we didn't want, and yet the comfort of our strides side by side made me feel younger and wiser at once. "I found a letter," I said finally, a few steps after we passed the bleachers. "One I wrote you after graduation." He stopped, then turned to face me fully. "Oh?" "I didn't send it," I said, and my mouth was dry enough to make me grateful for the pauses between words. I think I thought I would say things in person, and then I ran to the future like it would wait for me if I moved fast enough. He smiled with a sadness that wasn't sharp. "I wrote you one too," he said, and I laughed in surprise, the sound escaping who I used to be. "Did you?" "I did," he said. It was mostly about how much I enjoyed our quiet and how scared I was to ask for more of it without breaking it. I didn't send it either. Maybe we were good at almosts. Maybe we got better, I said. We kept walking until we reached the section of the bleachers that had always squeaked the least. He sat, then patted the spot next to him, not assuming I would take it. I did. The metal was cool through my pants, and the light from the parking lot cast long shadows that made us look like we had more company than we did. I don't want to make it strange, he said, and then laughed. Too late to announce that, probably. But I want to say things plainly. Please do, I said. I don't mind plain. I like plain, he breathed in. I liked you then. I liked you in the way that made me rewrite my day so there'd be time for us to sit and not talk, if that's what we wanted. I liked you the way you like someone you couldn't imagine wanting to be anyone else when you were with them. My hands felt suddenly like they were holding something precious. I liked you too, I said. I was scared. Me too, he said. And then life. We sat with that for a moment, the way you sit with a friend who just got news they already knew in their bones. The world didn't tilt. It steadied. A breeze moved through and caught the string of triangular flags someone had hung near the concession stand, making them flap like small applause. I'm out now, I said. Have been for years. It feels like telling the truth every day, which is a relief most days and work some days. Same, he said. My family came around. My job helps. I see people do hard things for themselves, and I'm reminded that most of us are trying. I work with seniors, I said. They taught me that we live longer than our worry knows what to do with sometimes. It's comforting, he smiled. I like that. He shifted, then looked at me with a question I could feel more than see. Can I put my hand on yours? He asked. Yes, I said, and I meant it. His hand rested on mine. It felt like a vote, like saying, I think this is right. Do you think this is right? I didn't have to swing wide to answer. My thumb moved back and forth on his knuckles. The small space between us suddenly a room big enough to hold what we'd kept in boxes for too long. I don't want to make a moment carry a lifetime, he said quietly. But I also don't want to pretend this is nothing. It's not nothing, I said. It's something simple and important. He looked at me then, steady and warm. Can I kiss you? He asked. And even though I'd been waiting for that question for years, he asked it as if the asking mattered as much as the answer. Yes, I said, and I saw the relief pass across his face like a cloud letting go of rain. It was a gentle kiss. It didn't try to be the past or the future. It was present and it was sure. His lips were soft and tasted faintly of ginger from the punch. The world kept moving the way the world does. Cars passing on the street beyond the field, a door closing with a muffled thump, the wind bending the tips of the grass. But inside my chest, something unclenched. The knot I had taught myself to live around loosened, and I felt the space of my own ribs. We pulled back at the same time, a choreography made by kindness. He kept his forehead near mine, and we both breathed like we'd been running. No one was watching us except the stars that had been watching since they learned how. I'm glad we didn't delete that email, I said, and he laughed, the sound low and bright. Me too, he said. We almost let the algorithm decide our fate. Terrifying, I said. And then we both smiled, careful not to jinx something that felt newly hatched. We didn't rush to tell the story to anyone else. We went back inside and found our friends and danced badly to old songs. When a slow song came on, we didn't try to make it more than it needed to be. We stayed on the sidelines, swaying without a beat, making each other laugh when someone attempted the same dance they'd tried at prom. At the end of the night, as people gathered their things and called out goodbyes like we were on a dock and ships were leaving, he turned to me and said, "Breakfast tomorrow? The diner on Main, 8? Yes, I said, and the certainty surprised me. I'll be there. I walked to my mom's car feeling lighter than the keys in my pocket. At home, she was in the kitchen, putting the leftovers in labeled containers like she could put the whole day away neatly. Well, she asked, her eyes bright, not prying, but ready. I saw him, I said. We talked. I stopped and let the word establish itself. We kissed. She didn't swoon or squeal. She exhaled, then nodded and reached for a glass of water to put in my hand. "Congratulations," she said. "You earned that." I slept the kind of sleep that comes after a long walk in a gentle rain. In the morning, the diner was already busy when I pushed through the door. The bell above it chimed like a small welcome. The waitress, Brenda, had been there since I was tall enough to reach the counter candy. She looked almost the same, which is to say she looked kind. "Sit anywhere," she said. "Coffee's on its way." He was already there in a booth near the window with 2 menus open like a confession. He stood when he saw me and we repeated the greeting from the night before. The hey, the quick hug, our hands finding each other's elbows. We sat, he ordered pancakes. I ordered pancakes. We laughed because it felt like agreeing on something large by agreeing on something small. "I don't want to make big promises that life can't carry," he said when the coffee arrived. "But I also don't want to let this be a moment that we pack away and take down only on holidays. I want to see you. I want to know what your Tuesday looks like. I want to know your neighbors by name. I want you to know my plants, which is probably oversharing." "I'm honored to know your plants," I said, then took a breath. "I want that too. Let's not move so fast we use up all the fresh air. But let's not move so slow we forget the path." We talked logistics because that's love too. He was in Indianapolis. I was in Cleveland. It wasn't the moon. It was doable in weekends and trains and phone calls that ended only when the battery begged. He had weekends off here and there. I knew my schedule well enough to make space for trips. We made plans for a visit next month. He'd come to Cleveland, and I'd show him the lake on a day that looked like a postcard. He asked how much my rent had gone up. Not as a test, but because he cared about my life being livable. I told him. He winced. "I hate that for you," he said. "Let me help with train fare sometimes." "I mean that." "We'll figure it out," I said. "Let me pay for pancakes." "We can start there," he let me. We ate slowly, our conversation traveling from practical to silly with no potholes. He asked for consent before every little closeness. "Can I sit next to you? Can I take your hand under the table? Can I tell you a story I've told only myself?" Each yes felt like it grew a small garden between us. After breakfast, we walked the mile to the park and sat on a bench by the pond where the ducks were somehow still in lively committee. He brushed the back of his hand against mine like a test I'd already passed. "I'm not going to try to move you into my city or my apartment by Christmas," he said, "but I would like to be part of your grocery list." "Is that a strange way to say it?" "It's perfect," I said. "You can help me decide between oatmeal and eggs." We spent the afternoon driving around town, telling the kind of stories that only people who knew the origin points could hold. The house that used to have the best Halloween decorations. The stretch of road where we both learned to drive and almost took out the same mailbox in different years. The bridge where he used to stop and watch the light decide what color the water should be. He told me about a patient who had taught him the quietest way to make a strong thing stronger. You let it rest between effort. By late afternoon, his hand in mine felt like an old habit rediscovered. We hugged goodbye with a promise of next time that wasn't airy. He had to get back. I had dinner with my mom. I watched his car pull away, taillights bright in the daylight, and then I smiled at nothing, which is to say, I smiled at hope. On the train home, my phone buzzed with a text from him, a picture of his plants lined up on a sunny windowsill. 2 were named Harold and June. I laughed out loud in the quiet car and turned my screen brightness down. After a minute, a picture from me. The view from my apartment, the bus stop, the maple trees, the deli with its peppermint jar. "Can't wait to see your world," he wrote. "Can't wait for you to see mine," I wrote back. Life didn't change overnight. It stretched to make room. He visited and we walked along the lake until the wind made our faces sting, and then we ducked into a diner for soup. I visited and he showed me a little bakery where the owner called him Sweetheart, in a way that made me feel the world might be all right. We learned each other's commutes and coffee orders and tired sighs. We figured out how to hang up when neither of us wanted to, honoring sleep as well as sweetness. I introduced him to Mr. Harris, who asked questions that could only be answered with honesty. He introduced me to his neighbor, a nurse who'd taught him to keep Basil alive. We navigated the space between us with care. When things were uncertain, we said so. When we needed to pause a conversation and return to it later, we thanked each other for the pause, then returned, better. A month in, sitting on my couch with his feet tucked under him, he looked up and said, "I'm happy." I answered, "Me too," and realized I meant it uncomplicatedly. It felt like a small miracle. Rent went up again, because that's how it goes. I talked to my landlord about options, and he offered a slightly larger unit on the third floor opening in the spring. We did math at my little table with the wobble in the leg, with Eli's hand resting on my wrist the whole time. We decided I could afford it if I took on a little more work, which I did, leading a weekend walking club that met in the park and moved at a pace that allowed for stories. We didn't rush toward cohabitation. That felt like a kindness to our future. We shopped for houseplants together, though, and decided that my new place could use a fern and a pothos. We named them before we even bought them. We put their pots near the window and started a routine. Water on Sundays, turn the pots halfway so they'd grow evenly, say hello, because plants deserve good mornings, too. My mother visited and brought her famous lemon bars. She waved at the new bus stop bench and pronounced it sufficient. She took a picture of Eli and me in the kitchen with flour on our hands and posted it with a caption that made it sound like we were in a cooking show. "My heart is in this kitchen," she wrote, and I forgave her for every emoticon she misused. Back in Mapleton, the reunion committee sent a photo album link. I clicked through slowly, taking my time. There we were, blurry in the background of someone else's moment, heads tilted toward each other, hands almost touching. I didn't screenshot it. I didn't need to. The picture was inside me now. That was enough. We kept choosing each other. That sounds simple. And it is, and it isn't. It meant choosing to text hello when mornings were stubborn. It meant choosing to talk about money without embarrassment. It meant choosing to say when I was scared, not of him, but of hope itself. He would sit with that and say, "I get it. Let's be scared together for a minute. Then let's see what we can do." Spring came. The city trees budded, then unfurled, then fluffed the sidewalks with what looked like summer's first thoughts. I moved into the third-floor unit with boxes that had been packed with a mindfulness I was proud of. He came on Friday, and we carried what we could. Mr. Harris supervised from a chair with a clipboard and a sense of occasion. We laughed more than we bent. We hung a picture of the lake over the couch and placed the new fern near the window. That first night in the new place, we stood by the window and watched the evening turn the bus shelter into a lantern. He put his arm around my waist and rested his chin on my shoulder. We were quiet, which felt like the best way to celebrate. "I don't know if I ever believed that the right kiss could change the size of a room," I said, "but I think it can. I think it can change the size of a life," he said. He turned me gently. "Can I kiss you?" "Yes," I said, and I never got tired of that word. We kissed like the first time, present and sure, and then the timer on the oven beeped because life is not just moments. It's casseroles, too. We ate on the couch with plates balanced on our knees and watched an old movie that made us both fall asleep halfway through. I woke to find a blanket over us and the fern looking taller than it had 3 hours earlier. If you asked me for a moral, I would offer this: answer the invitations that ask you to tell the truth. Or this: the door you almost don't knock on might be the one that opens to your kitchen, your couch, your Tuesday. Or this: some kisses arrive exactly when they should, even if their travel time measured in years. We visited Mapleton in the summer, hand in hand, not to show off, not to prove anything, but because it was nice to walk under the trees that had watched us avoid each other's eyes when we were scared. We sat on the bleachers again and watched the sky get itself ready for evening. "Do you ever think about how we almost missed this?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "But we didn't," he smiled. "We didn't," he echoed as if it were a toast. I felt brave then in a way that didn't feel like chin-up bravery. It felt like softness allowed. It felt like gentleness chosen. It felt like coming home to a place inside myself where I trusted my own wanting. In the fall, when the first chill suggested sweaters and sensible socks, he came over on a Thursday and stayed until Monday because his schedule allowed it and because mine did too. We found a rhythm easy to step to: coffee at the corner deli, a walk by the lake, dominoes at the center where Lena made everyone laugh until the tiles vibrated. He helped Mr. Harris navigate a stubborn jar lid. I watched him fit into these small daily scenes, and I realized that they were the big scenes too. One evening, as we washed dishes, he said, "Do you think we might?" and then stopped. Rinsed a plate, set it in the rack, and tried again. "Do you think we might want to share more of a lease next year?" He said it like a question that could be answered tomorrow if today didn't offer enough space. "I do," I said. "I think we're writing a lease with our days. I think we can read it aloud as we go." He laughed and wiped a soap bubble from my nose. "I like us." "Me too," I said. And I thought of the reunion email again. The subject line still waiting in my inbox like it was the big bang of this particular universe. I didn't delete it. I tagged it Keep. Months later, at a holiday gathering at the community center, Mrs. Thompson from the knitting group called us over and tied a ribbon loosely around our wrists. "This is what I do for people who look like they could use a reminder," she said. "You are both free and connected. See, loose enough to move, strong enough to feel." We thanked her and kept the ribbon until it frayed, which it did, the way most ribbons do when they brush against the edges of a life well lived. We didn't need the bleachers to tell us who we were anymore. We didn't need a train to confirm it. We still took trains because we liked them, because they gave us views you don't get from a highway. We liked sharing snacks and pointing out cows and making up names for the towns that flashed by. We liked the way the announcement voice said each stop as if it were a promise that someone would arrive somewhere and be met. On a morning like any other, I woke early, made coffee, and watched the bus pull up and carry people to their jobs, their classes, their breakfasts. He came into the kitchen in a t-shirt that had seen its better days and smiled the kind of smile that made me feel the day was extra long, generously long. "You're up early," he said. "Thinking about invitations," I said. "How life is mostly those." He leaned against the counter and took my hand, fingers warm from sleep. "Do you accept mine?" he asked. Not in a grand way, but in the daily way that matters. "I do," I said, and then laughed because those two words carry such weight in other rooms. "Every day," I added. And we both understood that every day is how you build a life, not in leaps, but in steps that feel just right underfoot. We still visited Mapleton sometimes and sat in the old gym for a holiday concert. The floor gleamed. Kids who looked like we once did sang songs about winter and candles and light. We looked at each other and recognized something simply good. We had kept a promise to ourselves we had only just learned how to say aloud. There is a lot that is complicated. There are forms and bills and days when the bus is late and eggs crack in the bag and you get a call at an inconvenient time. But there is also this. There was an invitation I almost ignored, and there was a kiss I didn't. And that choice made all the small good things line up like bright coins in a row. Sometimes at night, after the dishes are done and the couch has been kind, we stand at the window and watch the bus pull up, and he points out people he has invented stories for, and I listen. And then I point out that he's looking at the world the way I wrote in that old letter. Next to me, both of us looking at the same thing. He kisses my temple, which is one of my favorite places for a kiss to land. "Is this okay?" he asks, even though he knows it is. "Yes," I say, because consent isn't a one-time gift. It's part of the conversation we never stopped having. Yes. I don't know how our story will be told in the long run. I only know how it unfolds. One train ride, one pancake breakfast, one neighbor's knock, one ribbon around the wrist, one fern that keeps surprising us with new leaves. And a kiss that arrived right on time, which is to say, when we were ready for it and asked for it and chose it. If you're listening to this and holding your own almost in your hands like a complicated treasure, I hope you find a way to answer the right invitation. I hope you make a list and talk to someone wise and buy a shirt that feels like yes. I hope you find yourself on a track at dusk with the world the temperature of calm. I hope you ask and are asked, and that your answer feels like a door opening to a room with good light. As for me, I didn't delete the email, and I didn't turn away from the kiss. I said yes. I say yes again in small ways, in daily, ordinary ways. In the way I count out my rent and plan my grocery list and fold my laundry and water the plants and set out 2 mugs for coffee. In the way I lean my shoulder toward him on the couch and he leans back. In the way the bus pulls up and we wave and life kindly keeps stopping here.